Okay. Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Shamikia Williams. I'm a licensed clinical practitioner, and this is Reverb from the Heart. And today we have the lovely Ramza with us. And first of all, I was talking to Ramza a little bit about a dream I had about her, which I thought was very interesting. Um, and one of the things that I've usually think about first when I think of Ramza is how in some way we're like soul sisters, because there's always something whenever we talk that we can connect to. And so I'm very happy to have Ramza in the house with us and for y'all to hear her story about what her healing journey looks like. Hey, what's up, Ramza?
Hey, what's up?
I'm doing well.
I know it's good to see you. When you told me about the dream, I was literally like, lols.
Yeah. It's like, don't worry. She is gonna arrive, but she's gonna arrive on a different time.
Yeah, so the backstory with that is I had a last minute uh it was my birthday yesterday and I
Mm.
hadn't originally planned anything. Um but then, I did hear the words of my therapist being like, you should do something for yourself. And I decided to do something that I would have done anyway, which was like just go and be a parasite in a food court with like a book or something. And then I just got donuts and cupcakes and some friends showed up. But we
Mhm.
went on a last minute drive towards Shenandoah, my husband and I, and that's something that like we do often. But then I looked at the time and it was hitting 3 o'clock in the morning. I was like, let me text you. And then this morning you were like, "I had a dream."
No, that's the cool part. I was like, "Hey," when I saw your message, I was like, "I we spoke already about this delay." And I was like, "No, she said she has to hang out with this guy," which turns out it was her husband. She has to that she has to go do something with this guy, and then she'll be there soon. So I thought that was really cool. Um, anything, but right before we get started into today's discussion around healing and wellness, Ramza, is there anything specific that you'd like to inform our guests or our listeners before we get started?
Um, I go on a lot of tangents, so bear with me. Um, Describing myself is always complicated,
Mhm.
but obviously I'm a Capricorn, so I'll say it like it is sometimes. But yeah, nothing specific. I think it'll just kind of come as we flow.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so let's get into some things. Would you mind talking to us a little bit about what was the turning point or what was the realization that made you decide to begin therapy? Was it any particular single moment? Was it a series of struggles that was going on in your world? Or was it that you couldn't ignore anything that was specifically hindering your life? Walk us through that a little bit.
So I think it was like a mixed bag. I think some of it was just situational. Like when you're a student, you might not have the best insurance or things like that. So sometimes cost is a thing in that. Um,
Hmm.
and sometimes it's just at a default. Like you don't think about it for yourself, even if you're like, yeah, okay, I don't have anything against therapy. It's fine, but maybe it's not for me. Um,
Hmm.
because I think there's sometimes this notion that you have to be diagnosed with something to go to therapy, even though,
Hmm.
like, a lot of times you actually don't get diagnosed with anything unless you go to therapy. But it's not even about the diagnosis. I think what it was for me was that I met someone and I was like, "Wow, like, they're so cool." They were
Hmm.
just so cool, like, very like, now I know the word is, like, grounded
Mhm.
and calm,
Mm.
and she talked to me about the fact that she went to therapy, and
Mhm.
so for me, it was like, "Oh, wait, this person isn't just like this naturally, like, they actually evolved," and I've always been somebody who's into the idea of being able to change,
Mhm.
like not being structured, not being rigid, not being stagnant. So that's why like I'm a terrible student, but I love learning. Like I'm like, "Oh, I love the violin. I'll try to learn it," and then like drop off and just things like that that I feel like a lot of people can relate to. But I
Mhm.
think it was really meeting that person and seeing how therapy affected them and even their like relationships, their friendships. And so it was something that I realized like for a long time I want to say that my therapist was my journal where I
Mm.
didn't feel like I could always trust people because I was somebody who moved around a lot throughout my life, so I didn't have, like, one core best friend kind of going with me everywhere, but I did
Yeah.
have a pen and a paper and the ability to write. So, since I was 10 years old, honestly, best gift you can give a child at 10 years old, in my opinion, is a journal with a lock on it
Mhm.
because I had my little Harry Potter journal. And I remember my first time writing, it was actually probably around now,
Mhm.
when I was 10 years old, because it was my birthday, and I was like, I had a birthday party finally, because my parents were not big on birthdays, but
Uh-huh.
that year, like, I'm Muslim, and Eid fell at the same time as my birthday. So that
Mm.
was, like, huge, like, my mom's having this huge party at home, everybody
Mhm.
knows it's my birthday, I, like,
Mhm.
decorated the house, all this stuff. Nobody else in my family really cares about birthdays, I'm the one who
Uh-huh.
does, and so, like, why is it a big deal? But, like, my entry was like, "Ah, it was my birthday, but then this other girl told my mom it was her birthday too, and then my mom made us both cut the cake, and I was so mad." But, like, I'm writing with, like, my little gel pens and things
Mhm.
like that, that
Oh.
you don't realize what it is until years later. Like, I don't even call myself a writer, my husband will be like, "No, she's a writer."
Mhm,
She
mhm.
writes. And that's
Ramza's a
kind of
writer.
something that has,
She's
like,
a writer.
formulated, who I have become and
Mhm,
where my confidence is, and something I can always go back to,
mhm,
right? So maybe it wasn't a therapist physically, but allowed me to get into the idea of reflection, of
mhm,
changing, of being able to actually see that change. So even now, I mean, I have this notebook that I kept throughout some of my therapy journey just to be like, this is the change I want to see in myself.
mhm,
And then
mhm.
working with someone to get there, the same way someone would work with a personal trainer,
Yeah.
honestly. But like mental health, you don't always see the before and after picture the same way that you would with, let's say, a personal trainer, you know?
Mhm. So, I think it's really cool that you're giving us opening the window and telling us a little bit about what therapy symbolized for you growing up. It's having access to a journal where you're able to write your story.
Mhm.
In addition to that, it's seeing people who've represented groundedness and growth and evolution.
Mhm.
So then you get to a point where you now had to seek out therapy. What was the purpose of that?
Seeking out therapy for me was really like learning how to contain my own thoughts and feelings in a healthy way, right? Like I knew I couldn't stop certain things from happening. Like we're going to have good days and bad days, but I didn't feel like I was very well prepped for the bad days.
Mm,
And so it was there to like help give me those tools, you know, and learn through that. And I've had different therapists since, and I've been
mhm,
able to learn through that experience too, which we can get to that later. But I do think it's important to acknowledge like a therapist, not a magician. You might not get your perfect therapist the first time because
mhm,
you're learning too what works for you and what doesn't. So I think it's just about trying, to be honest, just trying, seeing how you feel about it.
mhm.
Not being afraid to at least see if it's beneficial,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So that
Okay.
was the reason for me is like seeking out like if this could have a positive effect on me, like I'll be proud of myself for doing it, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I like what you've touched on. You use the words learning how to contain thoughts and emotions. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. Like even myself as a therapist struggle with containing or if Now that I say contain, I'm like, is well, how do I feel about that word? Is it manage like for me, managing, understanding, being curious
Mhm.
of my thoughts and emotion. And so what was that journey like for you to getting to a point where you felt, can I say safe with the thoughts and the emotions that was coming up?
I mean, yes and no. I feel like now it's really hard to, like, imagine what it would have been like had I never gone to therapy,
Mm,
because there it's like, if, like, you've ever got, done kickboxing or something like that, and the first
mhm.
time, it's really hard, but then
Mm.
even if you take a break for years, there's, like, a muscle memory to it.
Yeah.
So it's almost like that, and I get what you're saying when with the word contain, because I don't mean contain in the same way that people think, like, compartmentalize. It's actually the opposite,
Hmm.
right? Whereas, like, before, I feel like a lot of things, it's like, "I can't think about this now." And so it
Mhm.
goes into either anxiousness or avoidance of one feeling or another, rather than, like, I have to go through this. I have to allow myself to feel grief if I wanna feel joy. I have to allow myself to understand what it is I'm feeling. Otherwise, I might just rely on other people. Like, in my experience, I was also raised by a father who's a psychiatrist.
Mhm.
So the whole mental health world for me was big on diagnoses, right? If that's a word. But for a long time, no one was reflecting on maybe why I was frustrated or why I was angry. And there was just this, like, thing put, like, "Oh, she's depressed.
Mhm.
Oh, we should,"
Hmm.
just this whole notion that she's depressed. So eventually I started to believe it too. Okay, I'm depressed. That's why I behave a certain way. But as I went and, like, things started to get a little bit more, like, analytical and, like, looked
Mhm.
into, it turned out I wasn't depressed. I was
Mhm.
actually grieving.
Mhm.
And I remember that day that my therapist had said, like, "You're not depressed. You've been
Mhm.
in grief."
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
symptoms of the 2 are very parallel.
yeah.
So all of a sudden, like, it clicked, and I'm like, "Okay." Because we put these labels on ourselves that might not be true, but then, and as a woman, like, enough times you've been called a certain word, at
Mhm.
what point do you just go, "Screw it. I'm just gonna embrace it. If this is what
Yeah,
the world thinks I am, okay."
yeah.
But that's not necessarily true. And a lot of times we're giving ourselves and our identity away because of a false narrative that somebody else came up
Mhm.
for us, right?
Mhm.
So for me, it's like it has allowed me today to sit with the fact that I am who I am. I'm capable of making mistakes. I am human. I have strength and I have weaknesses, and that's okay,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Like, understanding that, like, my relationships with people, especially friendships, have to rely on unconditional love,
Yeah.
right? And what does that mean? What is unconditional love? Because I can't go say, "Oh, my husband and I have unconditional love."
Mhm.
There's conditions. We're in a committed relationship. There are
Yeah,
conditions there,
yeah.
right? You don't
Mm.
come home one night, "Oh, I unconditionally love you." No, 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 no. But with a friend, it's different. You don't come home one night, "Are you safe? Are you good?" "Okay."
Yeah, yeah.
"I still love you." It's different.
Mm. I
So,
love that you took us here,
ever.
um, because, in some ways, by having unconditional love, we would have understood that it's not just about labeling a person with a diagnosis. Because then, as soon as we label someone, we take away some form of autonomy of exploration. We take
Mhm,
away their ability to understand and for the other person who's guiding us to be able to say, like, this is what's going on. This is what I think is happening. What do you think? Do
mhm,
you relate to that? Do you feel connected to that term? And so, like you talked about your dad and, diagnoses and how sometimes it's just like, here's a diagnosis, this is a prescription, now be on your way. And it's like, but
mhm.
where do we get the tools to actually know how to navigate the situation? Because, okay, I have this thing that I take as prescribed, but what am I still don't understand feeling depressed. I still don't understand this sadness. I still don't understand these thoughts that keeps ruminating incessantly in my mind. What do I do with that?
Mhm.
So, and then you get to unconditional love, and I was reading this book. It's somewhere close by, but it talks about how in the Western world, we romanticize and we put it right at the top of the hill, and everything is just on the top of the hill, but there is no work to get to the top. So everybody's
Mhm.
just fussing and there's chaos. And then sometimes relationship takes work because you don't just get unconditional love. It's cultivated, it's
Yeah,
nurtured, it's built over time.
definitely.
Yeah. So I definitely understand what you're saying, where now that you gave some, in-depth thought on the term contain, I definitely understand a little bit more what you mean. So Ramza, when you finally started therapy and you got to your first, I'm not sure how many, but you got to your first session, what was the emotion? What was the what were some of the emotions that you were navigating through at that time?
So I think at the first, so I've had 3 different therapists
Okay.
throughout, like, my mental health journey. I wanna say that the first one was more focused on, like, psychotherapy, I believe that's what they call it, which is a little bit more, like, talking about your feelings and, you know, like, going through the past and things like that. I mean, that was the first time that I think I really, like, was able not instead of, like, your friends know about your life, it was really, like, talking to someone who has background on it, who has
Mhm,
education on it, talking to
mhm.
them about it. I do feel pretty strongly at this point that, like, your friend is not your therapist.
Yeah.
Put put certain, because 'cause you're trusting someone, right? You're trusting someone with your story, and I say this all the time to people, especially women when they're talking about relationships, is like, why are we acting like our story is free cable? Why are we not acting like it's pay-per-view, right? Someone comes in and you're like, "Hey, this is all my trauma." You know?
Yeah.
And instead of like, "Wait, like, who are you?" Right? Are
Mhm.
you worth me telling you my story? Are you worth my energy? Like, do I even like you as a person before I tell you everything about myself?
Yeah.
By doing, things that way, the way I see it is I'm preserving my own energy.
Yeah.
Um, so the second therapist I had allowed me to really reflect on the fact that, like, yeah, you know, the first therapist, like, it was my first experience, so I didn't have anything to compare to. The
Mhm.
second therapist, oh man, home
Mm.
run. 'Cause that was when I discovered CBT, right, which is cognitive behavior therapy.
Mhm.
And, like, if I were to go to the beginning of this, let's see, actually, 2020, this is just as, like, therapy session 4, and I would just put little bullet points on what I wanted to work on because it's almost like, again, trying to, like, use the analogy of a personal trainer.
Yeah.
Like, maybe the first personal trainer was like, "This is a weight. This is
Yeah.
form, right? This is a proper way to squat." And that's
Mhm.
necessary too. And then the
Mhm.
second therapist, you're like, "Okay, I need to get myself conditioned. I need to work on my nutrients. I
Mhm.
wanna be able to run a marathon." Your
Mhm.
goals are all of a sudden different, right? But it's step by step by step. So, for example, like, just opening this up in, like, 2020, it was like the news and how I feel, how it makes me think of certain things, feeling worried about my perception through it, feeling
Mhm.
like I can't turn off. But then I would write, like, we talked about the hyperactive mind, which is not a bad thing, but we need to find a way to make sure it's recalibrated, right?
Mhm.
We talked
Mm.
about taking a walk, listening
Mhm.
to music, taking a walk, things I was able to reflect on, like how drawing or doing henna, those are things that allow me to heal, allow me to sit with myself. And so it was like, don't let one fear after another come. Instead of thinking, why wasn't I good enough? Think about, what do I want? this I'm literally just reading this changes the power from looking at myself negatively to what do I want slash what do I want to do. So put the focus elsewhere and then find compassion for myself. Right. So
Yeah,
that was just therapy session number 4 of the second round. But
yeah,
being able to have this, you can see like, wow, what if I didn't do that?
yeah.
What if I never learned that those things had meaning to me, that doing henna or maybe cooking or with taking a walk had
Mm,
meaning for me in my health journey. Like, I don't know if it's like Hollywood that gives us this idea of what therapy is. Like, you sit in a room, you talk about your feelings, you leave, you don't feel better.
yeah.
But in reality, again, that word contain, like, it's everywhere. It's a part of us,
Mm,
right? The more
mhm.
you can start to accept yourself for who you are, wallahi, the easier my life became. Like,
Mhm.
just the easier it became. I stopped feeling that, you're hanging out with people, you come home, you're like, "Oh, did I say this? Are they thinking that?
Yeah.
Oh, that is so much energy." Next thing you know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you're binge watching Love is Blind and feeling worse about yourself. No shade.
No, it's
No shade. Look, my friend got me on Love is Blind Habibi, and I will tell you that was a toxic trait, but oh my god, it was I mean, it was funny, it was enjoyable, like, again, we all have
I
our weaknesses, we can't be perfect.
I can't watch that show.
That's what I said. That's what I said. And we went to my friend's house. Next thing you know, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and they're
Yeah.
like, next episode starts, and you have like 5 seconds to decide. Everyone's like not moving, staring at each other. One friend's asleep. We're like, I need to go home. Oh, next episode started. What happened?
I
Like
can't.
they're so good. They're so good on getting you hooked. They're
Yeah,
so
I
good on
could
getting
see
you hooked.
that. My brain doesn't allow me to get that hooked. I personally, for me, I started and I'm just sitting there like, "No, mm-mm, this is just
Yeah.
it I just can't digest it. I can't digest it." Um,
Yeah.
but you know what I love that you just did for us, Ramza? I love that you showed how everyday tasks can be a form of therapy, can be therapeutic. Whether, like you said, um, I didn't specifically put anything, but you had mentioned, I put daily task here.
Yeah.
But you had mentioned some things that listen to music, going for a walk, and how those can be very helpful to somebody who is going through a lot of thoughts instead of just like ruminating and then
Mhm.
it's 3 a.m. and suddenly you're exhausted, you're tired, you're going to work the next day or that same day, however you want to
Mhm.
see it, and then you can't even function because you've exerted so much of your energy already for that day.
Mhm.
So thanks for touching on that because I think people really need to understand how simple daily tasks can still be transformative.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
The little
So yeah, those small steps. So Ramza, for you, were there any fears, doubts, or uncertainties? Were there anything like that that you wrestled with before or during the decision to start therapy? And how did
um,
you navigate them?
so I think the moment I had insurance and I was able to afford it, I was like,
Mhm.
"Woo, where can I go and try this?" Right? And it was like finding somebody. Like I actually the same friend that I mentioned earlier. I asked her, if she would recommend her therapist to me,
Mhm.
and she was really gracious about that. She didn't gatekeep, and she did.
Hmm.
Um,
Time out.
yeah,
I love that. There are a lot of people that love to gatekeep their therapist.
yeah.
That's really about like, no, because if your caseload get full, I can't.
I had the Thursday slot.
I had the Thursday. So stop gatekeeping your therapist. Everybody needs healing and everybody needs access to good therapists. Okay,
Mhm.
so if you're one of those who's gatekeeping, stop it. Okay, go ahead, Ranza.
No, for sure. I mean, look, I feel like the more people that are helping themselves with their mental health journey,
Mm.
the better off we all are. Like everybody wants to talk about community, right? That's the new buzzword. I
Yes.
feel like
Yes.
community, community. And I'll go there and I'm like, do you really feel
Mhm.
safe being who you are here? Or are you trying to still like go with the norm, right? Are we just
Mhm.
overgrown high school kids that
Mhm.
don't know what to do with
Mm.
ourselves anymore, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think a lot of that has to do with like cancel culture, right?
Yeah.
People are afraid of saying the wrong thing at the
Yeah.
wrong time. I say the wrong thing at the wrong time all the time.
All the time.
All the time. I'm like, "Oops." Mm, but, like, if just doing that makes somebody not wanna be my friend, were they really my friend in the first place? You
Mhm.
know? Is that somebody that I don't
Mm.
wanna say is that someone I want in my life because I really do cherish all the relationships in my life.
Yeah.
That grief, that includes long lost friends, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Um, but what I will say, to go back to your question, which, like, I wanna say that there was a point that I started to recognize that this therapist might not be the one for me,
Mhm.
and it was just something that they said felt like it hurt my feelings, but it
Mm.
wasn't in a way of, like, tough reality check. I'll tell you, like, I had been thinking about, going abroad for a minute just to volunteer, and it had been something on my mind for a while, but I
Mhm.
never thought I could do it. And so finally, it's something that comes up in therapy. But her response, I will never forget, like, she kinda threw it into this, like, "Do I have savior complex?" And
Mm.
that threw me off a little, and it also humanized therapists for me, right? In
Mhm.
the same way that I remember when my sister got married and then she got divorced a little while later, I was like, "Huh, my mom and dad can be wrong." And that
Yeah.
reality as, like, a 14-year-old child was huge, right? So, like, as much as I can make mistakes, so can other people.
Yeah.
And that allowed me to realize that, maybe we don't see each other on the same page. And instead of working through this and saying, "Oh, it's fine. It's just me. It's just me." I can still change something. And that doesn't need to be a bad thing. Right. Because I
Mhm.
remember there were points where I did feel like the therapist too was like, why are you here today?
Oh.
And I
Yeah.
didn't really have a proper answer anymore. I'm like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And it started like I needed a like it also allowed me to take a little bit of a break between and then reflect on what I had learned so far. And then and don't get me wrong, like there were moments that I really was so grateful that that therapist was there cuz in 2018 life hit me hard, right? And
Mhm.
just as I don't know if we need a little trigger warning here, right? But trigger warning. I didn't
Mhm.
have trigger warning, so I
Mhm.
don't really like feel. I feel a certain type of way about trigger warnings, to be honest, because when life happens, you don't always get a trigger warning. Like if someone
Mhm.
dies, like you don't get a trigger warning.
Yeah.
But in 2018, I was attacked outside of my house,
Mm.
and it was pretty rough. Uh, I say attacked, which is interesting, but I do
Mm.
that for other people. The
Mhm.
reality, I mean, you know this, right? Like, I was stabbed outside of my house, taken
Mhm.
to trauma. Um, felt like a movie. Like, it felt like I was watching a movie rather than experiencing it. But having a therapist to call and say, "This just happened,"
Mhm.
when all of a sudden somebody takes everything aside and prioritizes your well-being and your safety means everything. Means
Yeah.
everything. 'Cause there's 2 different traumas to a trauma like that, right?
Mhm.
I think, and I am not a licensed practitioner,
Yes.
but I'm someone who, has been on the other side of it
Yeah.
quite a bit. But there's one trauma, which is the attack,
Yeah.
and there's a second trauma of having to fill out your own paperwork.
Yeah.
having to deal with the bills,
Yeah.
having to call your job, knowing you don't have enough days off, right? Having to deal with reality
Yeah.
on the same scale. And you know how you said, like, we stay awake till 3 o'clock in the morning and you start counting down how many hours of sleep you can get before you have to go to work. That's all within survival mode,
Yeah.
right? You do
Yeah.
what you have to do to survive. And that has impacts on us. I think there was a few years where I allowed those experiences to turn me angry,
Mhm.
turn me resentful, and I knew that was happening, but my friends didn't because I just went MIA. I
Mhm.
I just stopped talking to everybody because I didn't want anyone to see that side of me.
What
I've
side?
always been I've always been very private when it comes to the struggle, right? I don't want people to see. I always used to say, like, I don't need people to see the steps on my ladder. When I get to
Mhm.
that place in the mountain,
Mm.
they'll know, right? Um, and so having someone there at a time where something unexpected happened was very, very important, I would say. Um, even if you don't always agree, if we don't go eye to eye, sure, like maybe everybody, not everybody has that level of familial support,
That's true.
right? And that's not always what we need. It's amazing to have familial support, but again, your mother might not be your therapist.
No.
She could be your best friend, you know. If you have that, that's amazing. And
Yeah.
that support is very important still. That is community, right? That's unconditional love.
Mhm.
And so there were people who showed up for me. I can't say that they weren't, but I wasn't willing to receive them at that time.
Hmm.
And so being able to have someone, in this case, a therapist, kind of a stranger to your life, helps.
Yeah.
'Cause you're like, "Judge me. It's your job to judge me if you want, but I don't it's not gonna affect me the same way that, like, a friend might judge me," right? Because all of a sudden, people were like, "We don't know what to say. We don't know what to do," and a lot of times people say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Like, I had a cousin that came and visited me after, and I will never forget. He was like, I was single at this time. He was like, "This wouldn't have happened if she was married."
Ugh,
You know?
like,
Like,
how does that even calculate?
South Asians, what can you do? A
Yeah.
lot of things revolve around that, especially being, like, a South Asian woman. There's a lot of pressure to be
Yeah.
in some sort of, like, perfect marriage or perfect this by a certain
Mhm.
age, and that has affected so many people,
Yeah.
right? So I think just, things like that. And also, we didn't talk about that, but there are cultural boundaries at times where people feel like I can't go to a therapist because people will frown upon that. People will
Yeah.
think something's wrong with me. It's not. It's starting to be talked about more now, I feel
Mm.
like in this generation, but
Yeah.
like back in our parents' generation,
Mm. Mm.
uh we didn't talk
I
about it.
think I think they could see that there could be a benefit of it, but it's not something that was warmly accepted. Especially it was such a I think when I think about my parents,
Mhm.
it's not like, "Let me go seek out community," or, "Let me go seek out help from a professional." It's, "Let me turn to, my religion,"
Yeah.
so that's where they got a lot of the guidance. But I do wanna say, I'm glad you called it what it is or what it was and what your experience was. Um, you shouldn't have to downplay your experience for other people's comfort,
Mhm.
So, yes, it was an attack, but most importantly, it was that you were stabbed, you know?
Mhm.
And I think you touched on it really well, like, this aspect of it that it's cool sometimes to have at least one person that won't judge you, especially if
Mhm.
it's a time that you feel like you would be judged, um especially around with people that didn't know how to communicate or express that, and while
Mhm.
you're navigating all those different parts of the trauma,
Mhm.
'cause you're right, there is the trauma of, like, the experience, and then having to sit through that alone while filling out, while doing all these things alone, it means a lot to, even if it's a stranger that is able to really validate and affirm that
Mhm.
experience for you.
Yeah,
Mm,
definitely. And I
so
think, like, it's important for us to not, what I call it is, like, to not play the trauma Olympics, right? Like,
mhm,
"Oh, you went through this. I remember when I went through that," right?
I got and
Leaving it where it is. Yeah, there's, like, a tennis match sometimes that happens, and to someone, maybe they think that that's a form of compassion. Their intent isn't to harm, but if
mhm,
somebody's still going through something and trying to understand it themselves and might not even have started processing it, right?
yeah,
Like, I went through some stuff last year, with the pregnancy loss, and I realized that I didn't start processing it until this year, until the
mhm,
anniversary of the date that I found out, because I couldn't,
mm-mm,
right? Same
mm-mm,
thing, like everything, for example, right now that's been going on with Syria, right? There's been so many stories that are coming out.
mhm,
There's a difference when your adrenaline is
mhm,
working.
mhm,
That's one thing.
mhm,
And all of a sudden, you're a
yeah,
freed prisoner, right? You're seeing sun after
mhm,
decades. This is when it actually, some people see it as a beginning. It's a beginning and an end at the same time, because now the processing is about to start of, this is what happened.
yeah,
This
yeah,
is what happened.
yeah,
And relating, like, how do you cope with that? Because Western strategy of coping isn't always the same as other parts of
mm,
the world.
it isn't,
It
it
isn't. We
isn't,
have this idea of therapy in the Western world that doesn't correlate in other parts of the world, because over there it has to be done differently. And we
yeah,
have to respect the fact that other cultures have to heal differently for very obvious reasons to them.
yeah,
We don't see it with the same lens. And so being
no,
able to have that compassion and empathy, that there are communities that have different ways of healing within their community already embedded, and we don't need to structure everything in this Western form of how we see healing or how we see trauma.
yeah,
Right. So I think it's important to acknowledge that there is a difference at times where maybe the typical Western way might not work for everybody. Right.
thank
And that's
you,
what I love about, like, really what the root of this conversation is like the daily activities, the joy, the
mhm,
resilience,
mhm,
right? How that plays into this narrative. What is the goal of us healing? What is
yeah,
the after? What's the point?
yeah,
Why go and try to heal yourself? For who? Right?
mhm,
Being
mhm,
able to answer those questions, that to me is where community and intersectionality really starts to come together.
yeah,
And I really, really feel like we, in this world, we need more of that. Like, we're so focused on the negative. We don't focus on, like, you're like, this is what I don't want, this is what I don't want, this is what I don't want. Okay,
yeah,
but what do
but
I want?
you yeah, yeah.
Right? We don't know what we do want.
No, that's why the conversation all often go to, "I don't, I don't, I don't, I don't."
Right. I don't like this. I don't like that. Well, what do I like? And then all of a sudden, what is it, like, indecisiveness and fatigue? And then
Mhm.
you're like, okay, I'm not doing anything anymore. That's it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, major tangent. Told you guys, gave you that warning.
It's it's just that, like, what you're talking about is so clear, because with everything going on, I love that you talk about, like, Western structure doesn't apply to other countries. Other way that they choose to heal is very different, it's very unique, and I see it all the time where people from the West come in and like, "Why are they doing it like that?" You do not understand. You don't understand, so you of all people should not criticize. You should put yourself in a position of a learner. You don't
Mhm,
know. Don't try to jump in. I see it all the time. Like people travel somewhere, or people go somewhere. I see people doing different practices and criticizing it or judging it because it's not a form of their practice.
mhm.
Stop doing that. It doesn't. It doesn't help the people who are doing it. And some people don't care. They need you to leave, matter of fact, you know? And
Mhm.
this is also to add on the fact that a lot of these things that are going on, it's also based off the systems and the structures of things that are also in place to make it very difficult to know what do you want. You go through life, you go to school, and the teachers tells you what you want. Your parents been telling you what you. I think you touched on it a little bit in the beginning of our conversation when you spoke about your dad, but the adults tell you what you should do and should not do. Your teachers tell you what you should do and should not do. Your doctor tells you what you should do and should not do. The politician tell you what you should do and should not do. The people within the community tell you what you should do and should not do. And so as an adult, you just keep getting older with no idea of who you are and what you actually want in life. And then you get to a point that you're now an adult living by yourself and you have to figure that out.
Mhm.
And then you're scared because people expect you to already know, not knowing that they stripped us a long time ago of autonomy. And that's why a lot of adults in like what people say big age is starting to figure out, who am I? Like
Mhm.
I have clients that I meet with and I'm like, who are you? Well, I am Judy, I'm this. I'm like, let's put those aside.
Mhm.
Let's put those aside for a bit. Who are you? And they may feel very uncomfortable that
Mhm.
they're like, I don't know, slow down, Trudy, or I don't know how to answer your question, so I don't feel comfortable coming back to this session. And I was like, no,
That's
no,
it.
no, please
One
come back because
question.
we can figure it out. We just need to figure out how to get you your autonomy back.
Yeah.
But again, the system is set up in a way that we don't have a lot of time to have pause, to
Mhm.
think, to reflect, to consider.
Yeah.
Um, so all of this, there's tools working against us, and that's why community is so important.
Mhm.
Why do we need to build community? Because it's in community that we get to really understand who and what we are. Not
Mhm.
in a community where they're telling you what to do, but a community where you have autonomy to explore your
Mhm.
identity, your emotion, and to slow
100%.
down the incessant thoughts,
Yeah.
Uh,
You mean to say that 2 weeks out of the whole year is not enough to figure out who you are? What? What do
It's
you
not
mean?
enough. What more do
What?
you need? First of all, you're
We give
having
you
a baby.
video?
Stop.
Yeah. But
You're
it's true.
fired.
I mean,
Stress.
look at the beginning of this conversation when you
Mhm,
said, "Is there anything you want us to know about you?"
mhm,
I no longer identify myself with my occupation, with my career, right? 'Cause
mm,
I've gone in and
mhm.
out, and being in a place like Washington, DC, I always giggle because you have some of the most quote unquote knowledgeable minds, right?
Yes.
Making decisions for people. And let me tell you, most of my neighbors have very, very likely
Mhm.
never experienced a day of poverty in their life. Okay. And yet they sit there trying to make decisions on who should get food stamps.
Ramza, don't make me mad.
And something I've done as a child is sneak in.
Mm,
I snuck in. So you know what I did? I snuck into that high society.
mhm,
And they saw me and they're like, wow, this girl's brown, but she talks like us. Right?
mm, mhm,
Because what happens when you move around a lot is you do this thing called code switching,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
So when I lived in New York, I remember when I moved to Canada, I had to learn to say ask. I could
mm,
'cause I used to say axe, right?
mm,
I always lived around Black, Latino people. I
mhm.
never ever learned who Nickelback was, right? I was like, "Who?" But then, like, when I started working in sales, for example, I realized, hold on, all I have to do is have a little bit of a British accent, yeah?
Stop it.
And then my sales, I'm not kidding, my sales would double. My sales would double. I went to London, I pulled it off. I pulled it off.
Ah,
And so I realized like I could jump into this, I could jump into that, I could do this, I could do that. But there was a point where I was like, wait. I'm gonna stop code switching
Mhm.
because I need to see who I am.
Yeah.
Those are skills that I picked up along the way, but I've been doing it for other people and their convenience,
Yeah.
right? So when
Yeah.
I left a corporate industry in 2022 and all these companies are like, "You wanna come work for us? You wanna come work for us?" I was
Yeah.
like, "All right, I have 2 conditions. 1, I'm not gonna be posting anything about working for y'all on LinkedIn for at least 2 years. 2,
Mm.
I do not want my photo on your website." And that conversation paused so fast.
Really?
And that told me everything I needed to know. I was like, "Huh, I was your DEI hire all along, and all of my
Ah,
knowledge and my information, that was just a bonus,"
yeah.
right? So the reason I don't wanna say I left, but I feel like I outlived a dream. When you realize, like, this is a smoke screen, I'm
Mhm.
good, I'm gonna walk away from this,
Yeah.
right? Now that's me going against capitalism,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's
Sometimes you have to.
and
You
let me
must.
tell you, like, when I, like, watch your stories on Instagram and I
Mhm.
see your journey, I'm like,
Mhm.
"You couldn't do this if she was here. You couldn't. Like, you seem so happy, you know, all of that, like, you seem so happy." I'm like, "You just you have to try so much harder at times to do those things here because a lot of it does
Yeah.
rely on cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching."
Yeah.
Which is
Yes.
why a lot of people are complacent to the lives that they have
Yeah.
because they wanna have the quote self-care experiences,
Yeah.
right? Or to me, like a lot of what people think is finding themselves, I'm like, actually like looks like escapism to me. You really want to change, like you don't have to fly 3,000 miles to change. You go to your bathroom.
Stop it, Ramza.
All of my like epiphanies have taken place in the bathroom.
Yeah, I've had a lot too in the bathroom.
Right? Like it's more than just Candy Crush. Like
Oh my god.
but, like, legit, like, I have a friend who's a very, very, very successful singer, and he sings all these, like, sad love songs and all this, and one day I'm talking to him, I'm like, "Who broke your heart?" And he's like, "Literally, I've never even been in a relationship." He's like, "I write these songs in the bathroom, and they just other people relate to them," and he's like, "I don't even know what to do." He's like, I've had, fans of his that have contacted him and been like, "So and so passed away in my family from cancer. Your songs have helped me get through it." And he's like, "As amazing as it is, sometimes I'm just like, it's not that deep to me."
Yeah, yeah. But I've heard something around this or come to the epiphany that I think there are certain people who are just spoken to in a spiritual way because they have sound that is going to be able to extend and reach. And so whether
Mhm,
they've experienced it or not, they get the words and they get the music and everything that they need to get in order to reach the people that they need to reach in order to provide them that
mhm,
form of medicine.
yeah,
And I've learned a new like I'm gonna run this down to the ground, but I've learned to understand the word medicine in such a different way, not just
mhm,
medicine as in pills, but medicine in dialogue, medicine in community, medicine in music, medicine is in it, so isn't like in the conversation or the food. Like for me, this is medicine because it's feeding something
mhm,
um, in my soul. And this exchange is like, okay, we got to sit and we talked and be merry and all that good stuff. And so,
yeah,
ultimately, a lot of these setbacks, a lot of the ways is the form is it goes down to design, and within the design of everything, um, it's the conditioning. How do we condition the people in order to suit the design? And it takes a small handful of people every now and again that's gonna want to come out of the design, and sometimes coming out of the design may mean that you get this opportunity to travel and to escape it,
mhm,
and to
mhm.
not be in the bathroom, Ramza.
Look, I love traveling, it's
It's
beautiful.
beautiful. The land itself, even recently, I've come to the conclusion that the land itself is even medicine You don't
Yeah.
have to know the people, but the land, the oxygen of the land, the air, the quality of certain things is feeding a part of your energy.
Mhm.
The water in that land feeds a part of your energy. So, when some people get an opportunity to travel or explore or get to do something, it gets to free their headspace and
Mhm.
their mind to be able to look back and really see what it is that you touched on it a little bit too when you talk about after having the experience, it took you a year. It took you until the anniversary of that event or that experience to be able to reflect back and be like, damn, that was my experience, and to
Mhm.
give it the respect that it actually
Mhm.
deserves, because in that moment, it's so hard to reflect. Some of the things that you might be challenged to do in therapy is very difficult because
Mhm.
where are you gonna get the time?
Yeah.
So when you don't have the time and you're in this state of survival where you have all this shit that you have to do, you have to collect certain things, you have to do certain things, you have to prepare for if you God forbid you have like all these additional responsibilities.
Yeah.
And so it's not until you get out, you get a space to breathe, you
Mhm.
know, and to do a deep breath. Like when you start to breathe, you forget you're like, this whole time I've been breathing in my chest. Yeah, girl, because you've been surviving. So now you
Yeah.
finally get to do a full breath.
Mhm.
I know, like when I started to do full breath, it's like there's so much thing that just wants to get released. And there's
Oh,
like
yeah.
these big emotions. It's just like you just want to cry because you're like, oh, it's finally you just finally get the space to want to let it out. And
Yeah.
so I think in that sense, sometimes just to leave or escape for a little bit of time gives you clarity,
Mhm.
gives you space. And so like for anyone or everyone that experience different forms of trauma, different form of grief, different forms of losses, um, I don't expect anyone to be able to process that in that moment. And
Yeah.
not anyone and if you are anyone who's listening, if you are someone that's trying to push someone into just moving away from that, you need to check yourself because it's not the time for you to try to get somebody to see the other side of the experience. No, because they're not ready to be on the other side yet. They are in this process right now. And the
Mhm.
best that you could do is to hold their hand and walk them, I want to say, through it.
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
it.
Be there for them, shoulder to shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think, we have this element of wanting to control things in our society a lot. And so if it's not done in a certain way or a
Mm-hmm.
certain expectation, it's not always accepted, right? So just to take in like how there's been a generational shift, like maybe some of the people in the older generation did, what I think is referred to as spiritual bypassing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where it's like, oh, you're sad, just pray, and it'll get better. But and that is important, right? Like I can
Yes.
see how that has helped a lot of people. There's a lot of people that do it, but I also think that there's a superficiality in faith that people don't acknowledge. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people, right? They're Muslim maybe, but are you more socially Muslim or are you actually like understanding that the term Islam means to submit? It means to surrender,
Yeah.
right? Surrender to the will of what? God, right? So that means you are not in control. I
Yeah.
may have gotten an apple from the tree, but I did not grow the tree. I did not water the tree. I did not
Yeah.
do anything. I did
Yeah.
not do anything to get the soil, none of it,
Yeah.
right? For me, like when you were talking about that breath, it really did make me think about the fact that in the last 2 years, it started with meditating every day. And then that naturally actually took me to a place where I got back in touch with praying 5 times a day.
Yeah.
And that's something that initially I didn't have a good relationship with because it was like very like traditional, like you have to do this, you have to do this. It was fear based instead of like I really wish that people taught me about God's love and God's mercy before they taught me about God's fear,
Thank
right?
you thank you.
Like
Appreciate you saying that.
like whether you're Christian, whether you're Jewish, whether you're Muslim, whether you don't believe in anything, we want to learn about love before we learn about hate. And for me, that deep breath, I call my praying sometimes. I'm like, to like the non-religious folk, I'll be
Mm.
like, it's like a spiritual smoke break. It's like if I'm mad at a situation or I'm upset at something, I'm not someone who's I want to say I'm a hopeful pessimist. Okay,
Gotcha,
that's how I will describe myself.
gotcha.
I don't Life hasn't always shown me rainbows and sunshine, so my default has been to expect to get a ticket, and then when I don't, I'm happy,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah,
It's just how my brain works.
yeah.
And so when I can sit there and go, while I'm praying, I can't be on my phone. I can't talk to anybody else.
Mm,
And they say too that, like, if you're someone who believes in spirituality, like they say that your fate is written on your forehead.
mhm,
So every time I put my head down and just allow myself to surrender,
mhm, mhm.
I don't have to be in control.
Yeah.
Right? And I always used to joke about this when I was like a teenager. I'm like, every time I make a plan, God laughs. But
Mhm,
it's true because everything I think I can do, mm-mm. I
mhm.
thought I didn't plan anything for my birthday yesterday, and yet I was surrounded by just the right people.
Yeah,
You know? I
yeah.
saw the most beautiful fog. It was just fog, so we were like, you
I
can't even
love
see
I love how
anything.
you appreciate the fog, cause people will be like, but
I, like, stuck my hand out, I felt it, I was like, "I'm literally in a cloud."
yeah,
Like,
that's
where else
so
in the universe can we experience that? People trying to go to Mars, they're trying
yeah,
to go here.
yeah.
Like, when we talk about escape, like, you're looking outward, 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 but have we explored the sea?
Come on.
Have we explored
We're
our
missing we're
own
missing the steps here,
We're
right?
making the sense, and when it comes to travel, something we didn't talk about, but it's the age that you do it at too, right? If
Yeah,
you travel with young children, you are showing them and teaching them empathy. It's a
yeah,
natural form. When you go and you realize that English is not the only language in the world and you have to learn to communicate to someone else, who
yeah.
feels silly now? You don't
Okay.
even know how to ask for where the bathroom is. Ha ha ha. Shame on you. But then when someone comes here and they have an accent, look at our patience with them. You're
Come
trying to
on.
do a return, and, like, I've heard people be so rude,
Yeah,
so rude, white people, but so rude. And I just wanna be like, "Excuse me, check yourself."
yeah,
The fact that somebody has an accent means they know a language other than you,
exactly.
right? But we need to up our own tolerance. Like, when's the last time American people actually went and got their passport stamped,
Mhm.
right? When's the last time they were able to go out and see the rest of the world instead of just thinking, we're number one,
Yeah,
right? We want this symbolic victory instead
yeah,
of acknowledging that all of us are unique.
yeah.
We all have different stories. And
Mhm.
that's the beauty of it. If you can't see the beauty of that difference,
Yeah.
again, in your words, you need to check yourself.
Check yourself.
Check
No,
yourself
because,
before you wreck yourself.
while we're on the topic of travel, before we get in back into asking you, a question, one of the things that before traveling is like, be careful out there, because, traveling to certain Southern American, countries, be careful out there, there's a lot of crimes. It's a developing country. I'm like, if you see the things I've seen in traveling, you would know, just pack your bags and go to that place and
Mhm,
travel, explore,
mhm,
because you'll be amazed at some of the places that you will come across that you never imagined that you would. And so
mhm,
that's just anyone who's listening, who's thinking about traveling and want to go to that country, do it. It's better
mhm.
than just
This is your
do it.
sign.
See it for yourself. The
Mhm,
technology, trust me, is not what they say. The food option is not what they say. The
mhm,
people is not what they say. Go into the land and explore the culture with the people, and you'll have a different lesson and understanding of that culture. You may not
mhm,
know how to fully assimilate to it, of course, because there will be some barriers of sort, but that doesn't mean that you don't take the opportunity to go and just see it for yourself rather than reading it on somebody's website or post somewhere. Okay.
Mhm. Especially if you're lucky enough to have a passport.
Especially
That
and
is a privilege that too many people in the world do not have.
yeah.
It's rough,
Yes, it's true.
you
Um,
know?
so, Ramza, I want you to talk to me a little bit about what are some tools or techniques or practices um, that you've been able to learn or discover in your journey or within therapy, outside of therapy, that has been very helpful to your healing?
Um, I wanna say that the 2 things are probably, like, pausing and acceptance,
Okay.
right? Pausing could be a form of, again, doing that walk, that daily activity, that thing that you would do when you were 10 years old, right?
Mhm.
Think about that. Allow yourself to be part of that.
Mhm.
Allow time to just stop for a minute. I stopped
Mhm.
looking at the time the same way when I started doing my 5 daily prayers. Like, I wouldn't
Mhm.
be like, "It's 2 o'clock." I'd be like, "Oh, like, it's after Maghrib or it's
Mhm.
before Asr."
Mhm.
Because it related more to the sun, right? It
Mhm.
related more to, like, daylight and how much daylight I have left,
Mhm.
and naturally, that actually changed my circadian rhythm. As soon as I left corporate, I was a night owl, and then I left and I started waking up with the sun, and oh my god,
Mhm.
why didn't anyone ever tell me? Like, oh, it is so beautiful to wake up before the birds.
Yeah.
It is so beautiful, like,
Mhm.
everything is quiet, and I used to feel that way about nighttime, like, I needed the world to go to sleep, and then I woke up,
Yeah.
right? And it's a stage, like, maybe in my 20s, like, that was the stage that I needed to, like, pass through,
Mhm.
and so that's the second thing, right? Acceptance. Like,
Mhm.
you can't hate on yourself. Like, don't get me wrong, like, people who overly love themselves, I'm not talking about mirror selfies and you need to get your nails done for it. It's just like, who are you without your nails done? Who are
Yeah.
you without doing an hour of makeup in the morning, right? Like, personal hygiene is key. Everybody should focus on that more. Please, people, get a bidet. If you don't have a bidet, please get yourself a bidet. Um, but accepting that you don't have to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
In general, I feel like women are taught to be perfect and men are taught to be brave. And that needs to rebalance a little bit. It needs to recalibrate a little bit. Like, is this decision that I'm making something that allows me to feel perfect and that will allow others to accept me? Or is this a decision where I'm going to be proud of myself because it's brave? I didn't
Yeah.
think I would do it. I didn't think I would try this new food. Or I didn't think I would learn how to swim,
Yeah.
right? That might not make you feel perfect all the time because you're going to realize your flaws that you might see as flaws, but
Mhm.
those are really impactful things, right? Like, we'll bypass so much of it. Like, people will be like, "Oh, I feel crappy. I'm going to have a drink." That,
Mhm.
like, my
Mhm.
husband says, like, it's like borrowing tomorrow's happiness,
Ooh.
right? Where you want to make yourself feel better, but you're actually like stealing moments of joy from your own future. When we do things to harm our own body,
Yeah.
like, okay, if you're asthmatic, don't smoke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's like those things that, especially in our culture, have been deemed okay. Who is this really helping?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes I do wonder if, like, the legalization of weed was done on purpose at this time because they don't want a revolution to happen. You
Rose up.
know? Because, like, you never allowed it, and now all of a sudden it's allowed.
I
I'm
think about
curious.
that. I
I'm
think about that
curious,
too.
right?
I think about
Like,
that too. I think about
so
that too. So,
conversation for another day.
this conversation for another day.
But,
You
like,
get
in
what
general, right? And, like, think about, like, the age that, we all talk about it, but, like, the age we got cell phones and the, like, now, like, there'll be babies that don't know how to walk or talk, but they know how to work an iPad.
yeah.
Um, And all these things are collective. Like I say to parents all the time, like you have a very difficult job because you're up against Netflix, Hulu, all these like things coming in. Kids are going to school to be trained for the corporate 9 to 5, right? There's no more nap time.
Mhm.
Forget about it. So that pause, people want a quick solution, right? Back in the day,
Mhm.
drive through was new, right?
Yeah,
Wow, you don't have to get out of your car. And
yeah,
now you don't have to get off of your couch.
yeah,
How
yeah,
much money are people spending on DoorDash
a
or
lot.
Uber Eats, on delivery services? Go take a walk.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Go
it
get
makes
to know your local corner store. Go get to know the person whose business might be struggling. Just go talk
Ooh,
to
Ramza,
somebody.
Ramza, you're making me think about how there's a push further and further and further away from community, and that's why these conversations are very important to me.
Mhm,
Because if we as a people don't have space where we can grow, growth can happen as an individual, yes. However, there's a specific kind of growth that happens in community. And
mhm,
if we're getting very comfortable just being separated from that, there's a particular sense of our soul that is being like imprisoned, I will say,
mhm,
where it doesn't get the opportunity to mingle because everything in the universe has community. Trees grow in community, water
mhm.
flows, and it's vast. There's
Yeah,
nothing you see the ants, they move in community. Um, and so, as human beings, I know that there's some people who are very conflicted with, like, because of their experience with community, with family, that makes it very hard. But you have the opportunity to also choose your family, choose people, and be sensible. Be have discernment when it comes to choosing your family, the people that you know that you want to be around, that will accept you. That will allow you to be courageous, that pushes you to be brave, to do the things that is not comfortable. And so
mhm,
community, that's why people when they get in relationship, they get the most conflict because there is something that takes place that you have to learn, and that happens in community. It does not happen in isolation. It does
mhm,
not happen it does not happen in isolation, and it does not happen in fear. It does not happen because you are ruminating on the fact like, well, what if they don't accept me? What if they see me as this person? What if they perceive me as this? But I am this. I'm flawed. I'm imperfect. You're supposed to be.
mhm,
You're supposed to be because this is also your journey and your process of growth. So
mhm,
don't don't ignore that opportunity for you to grow. And yes, that's like I said, that's why I want to have this conversation because there's a lot of ways to heal. There's a lot of things that you could do to for us to get to a place where we can then function in community, because otherwise we are fighting against the design. The
yeah,
design is intended for us to be individuals.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah, like 100%. I feel like the way to put it for me is like, the by design, we'd all be like those bedspreads that are one color, but by
Mhm.
community, we're a quilt, right?
Yeah,
Everyone has a different,
I
unique
like that.
pattern, but it fits together. It's a thread. So when you're making your friends, they don't all need to be the same. You don't need to be
No.
sorority
Thank
sisters.
you.
Find
Thank you.
someone that you don't click with.
You know how hard that
Find
is.
someone that's unique that you might be afraid of, and you
Mm,
will probably be shocked, right? Yes, there's this sense of safety in being part of some status quo.
yeah.
But are you looking for safety or are you looking for reality? Are you
Mm.
looking for safety or are you looking for joy, right?
Girl, we can
Resilience
go on.
is joy is resilience,
Yeah.
and individualism allows capitalism to win.
Yes.
And just think about it. Think about when you have to pay for an individual phone plan versus a family phone plan.
Mhm.
Who are they
Mhm.
making more money off of? Think about how many hours, billable hours, lawyers are charging every 4 to 5 minutes for problems that there could have been solutions to had we actually been a real community.
Yeah.
Had we not been chasing power or money or fame, right? I always say that I could divide every person into one of 3 categories. You're either chasing fame, fortune, or God,
Yeah.
right? And God can be like that sense of self, spirituality, purpose, impact, right?
Mhm.
Other people, they want recognition, right?
Mhm.
Other people that they're about the money. Money makes
Yeah.
it whatever that is, wealth, accumulating something that allows them to feel safe. But there is no such thing. You will never have enough money.
Mhm.
You will never be famous enough, right? Every year, the most followed person on this social media app changes, and look at them. They're like competing for that. But why? Stop and ask yourself why. Allow yourself to say, I don't know, right? Be
Yes.
honest.
Yes.
Just start telling the truth.
This start and I know it's scary. Like, it's very scary to tell the truth.
So is a roller coaster.
So and I'm scared of roller coasters.
Love roller
But
coasters.
at the end of it, you're like, "Ha," you made it.
It's gonna break.
You talked about I can't one of my favorite animated movies is The Prince of Egypt.
Ooh.
And there's a song that Through Heaven's Eyes, and one of the lyrics, I literally had to Google it just now. It says, "A single thread in the tapestry, though its color brightly shines, can never see its purpose in the pattern of the grand design." And so, like everyone has a role, and you won't see it when you just look at yourself or take yourself out of the what did you call it? What do you call the
The quilt?
blanket? The quilt or the tapestry or whatever, but, like, at the end of the day, everyone needs to figure out that you are a part of whatever it takes to actually see true, pure, divine change.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's it. Like, there's a divine plan for everyone,
Mhm.
uh, but there's also something in this world that is meant to distract you from your divine purpose. And so you're constantly gonna be at war, and that's why sometimes our soul is pulling us to do the things that doesn't look like what society looks like. And that's why I like the fact that you use the word brave. You said
Mhm.
pausing and acceptance. And as you continue to talk about acceptance, you got to the word brave, which also made me think back on something that you said earlier when you experience your being stabbed, and you mentioned being scared of being judged, and
Mhm.
then now you're talking about acceptance, which goes to show that there's a transition in your
Mhm.
walk of life where now you say what you have to say. Now you talked about even just like developing a skill, going to different places, learning the different tongues of wherever it is, and then realizing that this was meant to serve them, and then figuring out, like, "No, this is now meant to serve me. If
Mhm.
you want me, these are my rules, these are my boundaries." And then you're bravely and courageously you saying the words that you didn't say before, and now that you understand who you are and what you are and what you possess, you're like, "This is it. If you can't handle it, I don't give a shit."
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
don't have any issues with getting up and walking myself out your door
Mhm.
because I'm not
Yeah,
gonna be your poster child, you
right.
know?
Just
So
still different from that cancel culture,
mhm, mhm,
right? Not to be confused for like, oh, like sometimes you know and sometimes you don't know
yeah,
who's meant to be in your life, right?
that's true.
Was it correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was DMX. Is that quote that was like, I prayed to God to protect me from my enemies, and I started losing friends,
Mm,
right?
not sure.
And I'll double check it before we end, but like sometimes there's certain people who have a different time capacity in your life. They were there to show you. They were either a blessing or a lesson, right?
Yes.
I appreciate the people who might not be in my life today, but at one point they were. I still have love for them. That's what the closest I can get at times to forgiveness, is
That's a
just
good.
admitting that I still have love for them,
Mhm.
right? Even if they hurt me.
Yeah.
If they hurt me, that might not have had anything to do with me. It might have had more to do with them, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's times where people, like, they might be going through abuse, and I'm not okaying abuse at all. There is a period of time that that person who is committing the abuse was very likely abused as well, and they have not come to terms with it.
Yeah.
In order for us to create real change and real positive change, we have to come to terms with certain things and then accept the things that we can't control,
Thank you.
right?
Mhm.
And surrounding ourselves with that courageousness, I think allows me to compliment others.
Mhm.
Right? If someone has
Mhm.
an idea that's unique, or let's say, look, you're doing a podcast, right?
Yeah.
I told you I got this mic at my 30th birthday because I had a
Mhm.
list of things I was going to do for a podcast, but I never did it. But
Yeah.
I'm so happy you did it.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you did it. And
Mhm.
one day, if I decide to actually do it, guess what? I have someone who can help me. Hey,
Yeah.
what do you use for this? Or what do you
Mm.
do for that? And I
Mhm.
think that to me is how to bring our inner child into our adulthood. Not being afraid to say I don't know allows you to ask for help,
Yes.
and like, let's not be in the middle school stage of life. That
Mhm.
place where you think, "Oh my gosh, I have to be popular. I have to be this." Instead, it's like, I love being with the weirdos. I
And
love being a little weirdo. It's so much fun.
gang, gang.
Like,
Gang, gang. Like, I love being a weirdo. You can't take that away from me. I would get, like,
no.
this frame of says a weirdo because,
Yeah,
sometimes you just, it's ain't nothing wrong with that. People just don't
yeah,
understand you. That's really and there's some people are very scared of not knowing.
of course.
Um So, another question while we're coming down to the end is
Yep.
that I want you to you've talked quite a few about prayer. You've also talked about writing, which is your journaling. And I wanted to ask Ramza if there are other practices that's alternative to therapy that you do or have explored um, in this journey.
Um, changing what my idea was of fear,
Okay.
right? You think you know fear, and then all of a sudden you're being taken into trauma, right?
Mm-mm.
It changes your aspect of fear. But I think that in itself, allowing myself to be wrong, allowing myself to make mistakes, that part has been super crucial for me. Um, along with like just not feeling like I have to be in control,
Okay.
right? And also understanding that I'm still in this process. I'm
Yeah.
still in this journey. Like, for people to get upset because I changed my mind, hold on, I'm allowed to change my mind. That's
Mhm.
what allows me to grow,
Yeah.
right? And once you do it once you walk away from something that's not healthy for you once, that's it. It becomes addictive.
Mhm. It
That's a
really
good addiction,
it
you
does.
know?
You're like, "I can do that."
Someone who think I love people who think I can't do something. They're my
Mhm.
fuel. They're my fuel. Otherwise I'd be so lazy. Sometimes it's like taking what is your superpower that only you can do.
Mhm.
And for me, I'm a fighter. I love to fight.
Mhm. I love the fight.
Love to
I love the thrill.
fight. Sometimes just one good, we're not doing that, right? So how can I take that fight and
Mhm.
put it somewhere else?
Yeah.
Something my aunt said to me once, and I wanna say this because I think it's important. And, therapy was a new concept to her, and I told her, like, I was in therapy and this and that, and she's like, "Look, I'm happy you're happy if it's something you're doing." She's like, "But Ramza, don't lose your fire."
Mhm.
And that really clicked with me. She was like, "You're fine the way you are. Don't lose your fire."
Yeah.
That's so true. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have to lose ourselves to find ourselves.
Mhm.
We can know who we are,
Mhm.
but it's like we're given power. It's just knowing how to use that power,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
We could talk all day.
No, yeah, I
She's done.
yeah, it's, as soon as you mentioned this, I thought about this book, Women Who Run with
Ooh,
the Wolves, because this is absolutely about how women can access that fire
mhm,
and how the fire, women should let it
yep,
let it come out, and it doesn't have to come out in a destructive way, and if it
yeah,
does, so what?
mhm.
But
It's
if
a
you
great book.
ever it's a great book. If you ever get a chance, if you've ever been curious about how to really, explore your feminine aspect of yourself as a woman, I would absolutely recommend this book. They
Yeah,
have an Audible, which the author is the one that's reading, but I like the way that she reads it because she goes into just like allowing it to flow and telling you. But I'm pretty sure the book itself goes into greater details of what, all of it really is and what it actually means. Um,
would you say, like, to men who might be listening, what would you say about that book for them?
to men, to men who are listening, the first thing that's coming to my mind is to say this will help you to really provide a space for your woman to tap into herself, not what you think she should be, not all these responsibilities and expectation of femininity. It's to allow yourself to truly read the book and to truly understand what femininity actually is and how um, a masculine energy can coexist within that. That's
Mhm,
what I would say, to a man who is also curious of this read, which is a lot that you could learn from it. I think I've suggested this book to also a couple, friends that are men, and they really enjoyed reading it.
mhm.
Yeah. Do you have anything else that you wanna add to that, Ramza?
No, but I did, hold on, I was looking up, I don't know if it was DMX, it might have been Meek Mill who
Okay.
said that quote, so that's people can Google that themselves, but the lyric that I'm reading right now, it's from Who You're Around featuring Mary J. Blige. The
Mm.
lyric is, "One night I prayed to God, I asked, could he please remove the enemies from my life, and before you know it, I started losing friends."
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
And, like, something I will say, like, something that I can add in is, like, sometimes we need to remove something from our life so that something else can come,
Mhm.
right? For me, like, breathing, I needed to remove toxins from my life so that I could start breathing. I
Yeah.
later learned that lungs and grief have a correlationship,
Yeah.
right? So different parts of our body, like I think liver and anger,
Mhm.
right? So when
Mhm.
certain people drink, they become angrier, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also, like, you don't know what your body needs until you can start to purify it,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
people call it ritual purification, and different cultures do this differently.
Mhm.
So I think anyone, even if, like, it's like a white American, I would suggest tap into who you are, your ancestry. At some
Mhm.
point, unless you're indigenous, at some point your ancestors were elsewhere,
Yeah.
right? To tap into that and to tap into our past is how I think we really learn to prepare for our future. Um, allows us to start to build our own unique fabric,
Mhm.
right? recognizing
Mhm,
that each of us have a uniqueness. Like none of the podcasts you're recording are going to be the same,
mm,
because every single person has a different journey,
mhm,
a different element.
mhm,
And the reason for me I was okay with sharing is because I feel like it's a gift. To
mhm,
be asked something is a gift. If saying no is easy, why?
mhm,
Do what doesn't seem easy. And I guarantee that life's perspective will start to change. When I think about how I dealt with things
mhm,
before therapy, before prayer, when I was trying to be the one in control,
mhm,
was I happy? No.
mm.
Was I fulfilled? No. I would go say things like, I can't cry because if I start crying, I'll never stop.
Yeah,
I was so afraid to show my emotions because, again, the fabric of the system we live in wants us to be contained in that way.
yeah.
Because if we see a different opportunity, then maybe we'll be like, wow, having a
Mm.
family is beautiful. I want to spend time with my family instead
Yeah,
of I need to go out. It's three
yeah.
o'clock. Happy hour starts in 30 minutes and running,
Yeah,
running, running, running. Right?
yeah.
How many times have we been grateful for the sun? Right?
Mhm,
As somebody
mhm.
who lived in basements for years, this is how the sun is on me? Everything, everything. So I
Yeah,
can be having the worst day, but I can sit there and be like, "I did nothing. I did nothing on my own for sunlight to be hitting me." And the sunlight does not discriminate.
no,
The moon does not discriminate. Air does
no,
not discriminate. But let me
no.
tell you, if they could figure out a way, and they do. Think about the rooftop views and how they're more expensive, and they will find any way. If they could charge for air, they would. And yet we have it. We
Yeah,
have
yeah.
we need air every second. We need water every day. Yet are we grateful for it?
Mm,
And then we wonder why as a society it seems like everybody's so sad
yeah,
or hopeless. But that's here, you know? We talk about
mhm,
developing worlds. I say America's an undeveloped country with false lashes.
yeah.
We come here, it's the land of traffic.
I don't
How
know
much
if
money do you have
it
to get paid to sit 3 hours in traffic?
Oh, Lord.
Who actually owns you? We need to take ownership of ourselves at the end of the day,
Yeah,
and that will change a lot of stuff in our life. And if that starts by journaling, if that starts by making breakfast for yourself,
yeah,
if it starts by please stop going to Starbucks,
yeah,
right? Go find a local place. Go make a new friend.
yeah.
Ugh, it's so
Mhm.
beautiful. It's like reading like a book for the first time or watching your favorite movie for the first time. But instead, you get to learn from someone like who was once a stranger, you know? Everyone
Yeah,
wants everything on this, like, this is where we find our relationships.
of course.
This is COVID, they would be like social distancing. I'm like, we're not social distancing. We're socially like this.
Mhm, mhm.
We're physically, Anyways, getting off topic. But I do think at the end of the day, like being able to start appreciating like the fact that like a little bird just landed on my balcony, like just
Yeah,
looking at that, looking at the little things allow us to enjoy and prepare for the bigger things in life.
yeah,
Um, Something that I'll say to people like that are struggling in a relationship is I'm like, would you date you?
yeah,
Would you want to
yeah,
be around you? Be somebody that you would want to be around 24/7.
yeah.
And then the world's gonna come to you.
Mm, I absolutely agree with that. Uh, thank you for those, final beautiful words.
Of course.
Ramza, so much gratitude to be able to share this space. You had a tea.
It's my hot water and honey. That's my other thing. Like just that grounding thing could be the smell of coffee or the smell like for me it's
Ah,
just like reminding myself to have water, throw some honey in,
ah,
you know, it's my
ah.
thing. I don't
Yeah.
know. Not as popular, but I'm not gatekeeping it.
No, no, no. She is
I
not
want everybody.
gatekeeping anything. So yeah, I just want to give so much gratitude for you to come and share this space with me to tell your story, to share your words of encouragement. So thank you for that, Ramza. And there's something that I meant to say, but when I get started, but I didn't. But it's on my mind now. So obviously, it is something that is necessary for me to say. So I want to say thank you to not only my family in the present life that I live, but also families in the life before that I didn't get to meet. So my ancestors and those who created and paved the way for me to be here and for those to come. So, Ramza, if there's any final thoughts, I know you shared a lot, but if there's anything else, then you can wrap it up. And if there's anything, any Thanksgiving that you also want to share, you can also share that. Anything?
I love what you said about paying respects to the people that we haven't met. Um,
Mhm.
so I will retweet that one.
Mhm.
I'm so appreciative of you, the way
Mhm.
we've met, the journey you and I have had, um, and just allowing this conversation to exist. You know, if
Yeah.
it helps one person, that's beautiful. Like I'm happy for that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, and I'm super proud of you for doing this. Like I feel like I
Yeah,
was always like, you should have a podcast.
I
You should have
know.
a podcast. And like here you are, and that to me is brave, and bravery can be contagious.
Yeah,
So, I love being able to surround myself with people that are doing something, because it inspires me all the time to like look at the world through a different lens, a different
yeah,
perspective.
yeah,
But yeah, no, I'm super appreciative of it. I hope anybody who's listening was able to gain something from this conversation.
mhm.
And, sorry about the millions of tangents. Like, annoying. I've accepted it. Like, I'm a SpongeBob meme.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, all love and hoping for more peace and just for the world to really heal a lot more collectively in the
Yeah,
future. So yeah, thank you.
yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. Until next time, Ramza.
Peace.